Hello, I'm Sarah Russell, former producer of the ADHD Skills Lab. I'm thrilled to introduce my latest project, the Neurodivergent Report, an educational podcast dedicated to empowering neurodivergent individuals with accessible scientific knowledge and amplifying their exuberant stories. In each episode, we'll explore topics like the genetics and heritability of neurodiversity, alongside practical strategies for managing executive dysfunction and emotional dysregulation. Together, we can learn to heal in community. However you are able to engage, thank you for being here. Hello. I am super excited to be here today with Dr. Day. Dr. Day is a naturopathic doctor based in the Washington, D.C. area who's been working for over 20 years with women like me who are struggling with health issues that they don't really know are from hormonal imbalance. So I've been waiting for this episode. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my own doctors sort of suggested that I go see a naturopathic doctor. And I laughed it off at the time because I was like, well, insurance doesn't cover that. So, I guess it's cheaper to start a podcast, right?
Just have them on and ask them a ton of questions.
My goodness. Yeah. I mean, unintended perks of being a reporter. Yeah.
Well, I love the fact that I went to school in Connecticut. The University of Bridgeport had a College of Naturopathic Medicine for about 20 years, and that's actually where I went to school. So it's great that in Connecticut and in other parts of the country as well, that there are places that recognize the value of what naturopathic medicine can bring, that holistic view of looking at all the pieces and the underlying cause. And then there are other places that are still learning about how we really can help people heal.
Amazing. So are you suggesting there might be regional discrepancies on like what people understand about naturopathic medicine?
Yeah. So if we look at medicine and we look at the way medicine is regulated, every single state, doesn't matter if you're a conventional medical doctor, a naturopathic doctor, a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, a massage therapist, every state has its own licensure policy. So because of that, uh, states don't recognize naturopathic medicine as a primary care physician practice. And so we have to petition each one of the states. So when I graduated from Bridgeport's College of Naturopathic Medicine in 2002, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, because we are all right here together, none of them had recognized naturopathic physicians. So when I came back home to DC, which is where I'm from, I not only had to practice medicine, but I had to advocate to be recognized because we go to four-year institutions. We have license exams in our second and fourth year that we have to pass in order to prove that we know how to administer, all the types of medicines we do, herbs, medication, counseling, nutrition, physical medicine, hydrotherapy, which is like water therapy, like sauna treatments and hot and cold therapies and, all of that. So we go through all of that
Very
so that
visceral.
it's a lot. And so I ended up, in addition to practicing, being an advocate, and now Washington, D.C. and Maryland both recognize naturopathic medicine as primary care in the states. We're still working on Virginia, but that's what we're looking at. So there's kind of you have to be committed to your patients. You have to be committed to practicing safe medicine. You have to be committed to teaching the states and other people, insurance companies, all of that about how we offer benefits of what patients want. A lot of people don't want to be medicated. A lot of people want natural solutions. And because we have the internet and Dr. Google, people Google things. And if you're not looking at the underlying cause, if you don't look at drug herb interactions, if you don't look at, the latest research and science backed by 5,000 years of experience around medicine, you may not get the right combination to help you feel
Mhm.
better. And I find that people get frustrated and disappointed when they
Oh,
want
yeah.
to use natural methods and they don't know how to use them. Their conventional doctors don't know how to use them or haven't been educated about them. And so it becomes a very frustrating cycle where the patient feels like no one really wants to help me. And it's because they don't have the right support to help them get the right answers.
Yeah, that is definitely such a frustrating place to be. Discernment required to know personally what is wrong with you. I mean, yeah, like you said, how are you supposed to have 5,000 years of wisdom as a patient? It's hard enough to be a specialist in the area. Gosh. And I also just really want to say, like, it is so special to me that you went to school in my hometown. Yeah, Bridgeport, Connecticut is not necessarily like a destination hotspot, but it's definitely a place that's close to my heart and probably always will be. And yeah, so it's just amazing that we were in the same place at the same time in totally different phases of life.
Exactly. It's
And here we
always
are
just,
again.
yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so you jumped right in and you told me what is a naturopathic doctor. I mean, that was obviously going to be my first question because I wasn't super sure. But you started to speak on what took you down this path. But let's dig into it a little bit more because were you already a different kind of doctor?
No. So the way I got here, I believe
Yeah.
there's always divine intervention into what your path is. And I went to school and I was planning to work in business. So I went to school at Northwestern University. Go Cats! So in Chicago, Illinois. And when I graduated, I came back to DC, which is where I was born and where my family is. And I planned to work in corporate America. I had gotten a job in one of the top 5 consulting firms in the country. And I was working, I don't even know how many hours, definitely 80 hours a week. I was traveling to my client site and it was an hour and a half away. And I was really stressed out. And my mom had sent me to see her naturopathic doctor. So we had the opportunity of my mom found a naturopathic doctor in the area. And again, at that time, naturopathic doctors weren't licensed so to practice medicine, but she had still gone to school. She had all of her training. She was willing to support people. And if people could find her, she would help them. And so I went to her and she was like, "You're stressed out. You're eating crazy. You're burning the candle at both ends. You are not going to make it. You're going to be, a mess by the time you're in your 50s. You have to take your life back and you have to change the way that you're operating because you're headed towards illness."
Wow.
And she was right. And the changes that she made with me, just because I was 24, I was literally crying on my way to work because I was like, this sucks. There are too many hours in the day. I'm so tired. I'm not seeing my friends. My face is broken out. My periods are not regular. I have gas and bloating. It's like, this is not what I thought being a
Like,
consultant
I'm
was.
a grown up. They told me this was going to be done by now.
Exactly. This was gonna be fun. I was gonna enjoy myself. But if this is
Yeah.
what being a grown-up is, this is burnout, at 24. And she's like, "So you have to change your life. You have to change the way you eat. You have to do stress management practices. You have to spend time with friends. You need to have these certain supplements. The foods that you're eating are causing nutritional deficiencies." And as I made the changes that she recommended, my energy got higher. I became more passionate about life. I had more energy. Instead of driving an hour and a half each way, I got an apartment closer to where my client was so I could go for walks in the evening instead of taking that hour and a half drive home. So my lifestyle changed, my energy changed, my personality changed. I felt more like myself. And because she did that for me, I wanted to do that for other people. So for me, that meant I had to go back to school and get all my pre-medical requirements because I wasn't planning to be a doctor. And so that took a few
Okay.
years. Then I had to apply to naturopathic school. I had to get accepted to naturopathic school. I had to go through my 4-year training. I had to pass all my board exams. And after doing all of that, I came back to DC and started a practice. So then I became a business owner as well as a physician because there are not that many naturopathic doctors. So many of us, whether we want to or not, have to be business people as well as doctors in order to be able to serve people.
Yeah.
And I work
Like
most
just to be out there in the market. Yeah.
to be out there in the market. I became an entrepreneur.
That is such a passion that that woman lit under you, I think, in order to go through all of that stuff. But I'm curious how you started the change, like, because when you're, gosh, I mean, when you're way down with all of that
Mhm.
and you're unwell, how do you start to add more things so that you can get better? I mean, that's usually where people stop listening. They're like, oh, just breathe. Okay, thanks. Already doing that. Check.
Well, yeah, he's right. It's like, okay, but I
But
think
how are
that
you doing it?
the way that I approach when I work with my patients is that people eat anyway. Like I had this conversation a couple weeks ago. There are a group of us, we were sitting around and we were watching TV on the weekend. We were watching football. And one of the ladies turned to me and she said, I eat really bad. I eat really, really bad. So if I eat really, really bad, what would you recommend for me? And a couple other people in the room jumped in, including her husband, and said, stop eating sugar. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. And they all jumped in to answer the question. And I said, my approach to working with patients is I don't tell them to start cutting everything out because that's a very stressful way to view making change. And so if someone is not eating well, like she said that she wasn't eating well, I do talk to them and I create individualized programs for my patients so that we can talk about this one on one. But in general, I would say, you know, what are the things that you like that are healthy? And how do you add those things in? Because a lot of people, and to answer your question of how I started, when I sat in the chair and I was talking to Dr. Andrea Sullivan, who was my first naturopathic doctor, she's still practicing today. We're still in contact. She asked me to do a diet diary. And what I said to her was, oh, no problem. I love fruits and vegetables. Because I do. I love fruits and vegetables. My dad's family grew up on the farm. We used to have I used to eat tomatoes like people eat apples. I just bite into it. Like that's what I grew up doing. But when I did the diet diary, I was eating like ketchup and pickles on a McDonald's hamburger because I was eating fast food. So even though I love vegetables, when I did that look at myself and what I was eating, I realized that I wasn't eating them. So if I love them, and that's something that I know that I can do, my first way of translating what happened to me to my patients is, well, what is it that you like? What is it that you know is healthy? What restaurants have that? What do you have in your kitchen that you could make? Can you start eating that more often? Because what happens is when you start eating good food, it crowds out the bad food. So instead of taking this idea of people that are overwhelmed and giving them one more thing to do, right? Because that's what happens when people feel overwhelmed, then they don't want to do anything else. They shut down. But if you say, here are things that you already like, here are things that we already know that you can do. How do you do more of that? They start doing more of that. And then once they do more of that and they're making change, certainly I'm going to take out the sugar. But I'm not going to go for someone is having sugar cravings to manage their stress that they're having all the time because being stressed can cause sugar cravings, and tell them, okay, you're still going to be stressed. Your life is still stressful, but now you can't have the food that calms and soothes you. That's going to make it even worse. So when you start adding things that you already do, but doing it in a more healthy way, you like taking a walk? Well, schedule yourself for a walk, 5 or 10 minutes every day. Get some sunshine, get some fresh air. Do that. So start with things that you can do, and that will start that cascade of habits. And then it's easier to change your habits or have you take things out that are not good for you once you're doing things that are good for you.
There's a lot of research around habits, forming, breaking, and it's really, when you sort of replace, or when you're taking something away, you want to replace it. And you definitely don't teach people something new from a place of stress. So that seems really consistent with all the literature. Amazing. Okay. So I personally would love to hear more about your Perry scorecard. So for everyone who, I don't know, maybe doesn't know what that is, we're sort of talking about perimenopause, and Dr. Day here has developed a little scorecard to sort of, I think, show us if we need to start looking at that for ourselves. Yeah. So tell me more about
Yeah.
that.
So in my practice, as I mentioned before, I work mostly with women. So I definitely work with women generally between the ages of 30 and 70, 75. So that's the group of women that I work with. And I think one of the great times about right now is that the concept of perimenopause and menopause is starting to be talked about. Because what I started to notice
Thankfully.
as I was working with women, usually in their mid 40s, it could start as early as 30, in the late 30s, but in their mid 40s to mid 50s, women started to talk to me and say, I don't feel like myself. They started saying things like, oh, I have weight gain, or I'm more emotional, or I get more tired and fatigued more easily. And everything that I used to do to help me feel better, it's not working. And they were hitting a wall, and that wall was frustration because they were doing what they used to do and it didn't work. And so I developed this, it's a perimenopause scorecard. It looks at your symptoms, or menopausal scorecard, because a lot of women don't understand what's happening to them when they go into their mid 40s, because the perimenopausal time, your body is changing because your estrogen levels and your progesterone levels, these hormones, are starting to wane. And because they're changing, some women will have menopause, will have a menstrual changes, because a lot of people, I think, when you hear the word menopause, people think about the menstrual cycle. But really what's happening is your estrogen levels and progesterone levels are changing, and that can affect other hormones as well. And so you might start feeling, hot flashes, night sweats, dizziness, irritability, depression, anxiety, heart palpitations, brain fog, memory issues, digestive issues. All of these are things that don't have anything to do with your periods,
Yeah.
but they
Which
have
doctor do you call?
exactly, exactly. So they don't have anything to do with that, but these things are happening to women in their late 30s and early 40s. These are all examples of symptoms that happen during perimenopause. They're over 40. So the perimenopause scorecard gives you the opportunity to look at all the symptoms and to rate yourself, to say, how many of these do I have? And they may not, again, be related to your periods necessarily, but they're related to the fact that estrogen and progesterone are changing, and estrogen has receptors on every single cell in our bodies. So when it changes for women,
We're talking
all of
about a
this,
total system collapse here, friends.
oh, it's a reboot.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for correcting me, because you're right. That was my propensity for dramatic, but because
No, people feel that.
it
There,
feels like
people feel that way. But the reason why I say that it's a reboot is because there's finally research on women, and that traditionally there hasn't been research on women. And Dr. Lisa Mosconi is a neuroscientist, and she has been studying the brain, and she started studying Alzheimer's, but then she found that in this midlife area, something was going on for women. And what it was is the decline in estrogen. And because she studied us, she let us know that all these symptoms are part of the reboot that happens to our brains and the reboot that happens to our bodies. And this perimenopausal time is generally can be between 4 and 11 years. That's a decade of changes that are happening to us. And once we get through that perimenopausal and the menopausal shift, and we're in menopause for a few years, literally our brain is rebooting itself. It is getting rid of things that are no longer important for us. It's changing. I was just listening to her, an interview with her last night, and she was saying that our anger and our frustration levels after we've gone through the menopausal change don't seem to be as intense, but our positive feelings continue to be intense. So, literally, on the other side of menopause, we still have joyful,
That sounds so
loving,
nice.
contentment feelings, and our anger and frustration and rage don't land as heavily on us after menopause as before. So, it's definitely a reboot, and it takes a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes a long time to condition a brain, so I guess to recondition one. Wow. Oh my goodness. There is so much I want to say. I don't even know where to start. This is amazing. First of all, I feel like I want to say I knew it.
Good. That's good. Listen to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my mid 30s, but I have thyroid dysfunction. So I have on the outside, I look like I have a super fast metabolism, but on the inside, I already have like a super fast heart rate. My body's literally eating itself. Yeah, I'm ill. And I don't fully understand the connection, but I do know that that can start to trigger an early sort of menopause. So I can't currently find any of my doctors who want to entertain that with me. I went to my OB and I said, I want to talk about my hormones. And she said, I think you're depressed. And I said, yes, but I also have physical symptoms. So let's talk about those.
Well, I think I love that you are standing up for yourself, because what I was saying before about this whole process that women go through is that because estrogen is in every single part of our bodies, in every single organ system, that when as estrogen and progesterone begin to shift and decline, it has physical ramifications, mental and emotional ramifications. And that in conventional medical school, I learned this because I didn't go to that medical school, but there are conventional medical doctors. There's one woman, Dr. Mary Claire Haver, who says, our medical program, I'm an OBGYN, and I didn't learn anything about menopause, that the focus is really on fertility and pregnancy. So even though she was speaking from her experience, she said none of us did. And she had to go and learn about menopause so she could become a menopause expert. So for women like yourself, you go to your primary care, you go to your OBGYN, you go to your cardiologist, and each one of them is in their silo and they throw you to the other person. But estrogen affects our heart health. It affects our emotional health. It affects our every body system. And so this is where people like myself, and one of the gifts that I didn't even know I had is in naturopathic school, we talked about what do you feed, or how does the dietary requirements change when women go to menopause? What are the herbs that can help women in menopause? What is appropriate in terms of hormone replacement therapy for women in menopause? What kind of counseling and support do you need to give women in menopause? How do you treat them after menopause is over? So that was part of our curriculum.
Yeah,
So
how do
when
you start
women
to
came,
recognize them before menopause? Because menopause is the anniversary of the change. Like you already
exactly.
done been through the change, you're done. Your suffering is about to be over, but that's when we start to give people support. That doesn't seem right.
So it's unfortunate. So the medical system is broken. So for you and for other people that go and ask questions and ask for help, those doctors haven't been given the information and the support and the infrastructure necessarily to help you. So if you start to wonder what is going on, I think the biggest symptom that I can share with any woman in their 30s or 40s is if you are not feeling like yourself, or things that you used to do that worked no longer are working for you, and like what's happening, that is a place where you say, I heard that podcast and Dr. Day said something about a perimenopause scorecard. Let me check that out. And if you
Mhm.
start to see that you have multiple symptoms on that scorecard, you want to find someone who is a menopause expert. I'm a menopause expert. There are other people out there that are menopause experts, and have a conversation or set up an appointment so that we can confirm what you are already noticing that's happening in your body. Because that in of itself, women are like, oh my God, thank you for telling me this is what's going on. I didn't know what's going on. And that turns on the light bulb of hope. And then from there, you can set up a plan of action to help you to get better.
Yeah, I think it's especially important to escalate this as an issue if you start to see symptoms in like more than one area of your body. Like if you just have like the hot flashes and like the autonomic nervous system symptoms, then it might not necessarily be the menopause, But if you start to see it in multiple systems where you're like, what doctor do I even go see about this? How is this connected? Also a huge sign. It was for me anyway.
The fact that you are bringing up the point about the autonomic nervous system, because I wanted to say something else to you, Sarah, is that all the hormones act like an orchestra. So if something's going on with your thyroid, it's going to impact your adrenals, or it can impact
I
your
love that.
insulin, or it can impact your estrogen. So most people don't know or realize that our hormones, they talk to each other. They're chemical messengers that are sending signals to different parts of the body to do different things. And that when one is off, it can throw off others. And so the
Mhm.
fact that you are like, I understand that thyroid is happening for me right now. And yes, maybe I do feel depressed. And there's some other things that are going on. So I have these multiple symptoms. So what do I do now? And I think that people are surprised that getting that help and support to balance one, if it's imbalanced, can help you reduce symptoms in other areas, whether it's your thyroid, or it's your estrogen, or whether it's your insulin, or whether it's, your thyroid. Those are the big four. Those are the top four. There's certainly other ones like melatonin for sleep, right? For example, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins,
Well,
right?
yeah, because I was gonna ask about the difference between hormones and neurotransmitters, but I know that like hormones are sort of a byproduct of neurotransmitters. So
Well, so chemically they're different. So you can have things that are built that have built with amino acids and peptides, and
I
those are
see.
generally considered neurotransmitters because they're amino acids that are put together like a train, and they still send signals from one part of your body, like your brain, to other parts of your body. Whereas hormones sometimes can be only amino acids, but they could also have fatty acids or like a cholesterol base. So estrogen, for example, has a cholesterol base. Cortisol and epinephrine have a steroid base. So those are fatty acids and amino acids that are connected together. So those are hormones as well. So this is kind of a little bit of a techie science point, but both neurotransmitters as well as hormones are chemical messengers. And those chemical messengers send signals from one part of the body to the other part of the body to tell it to do something. That's the way that they're similar.
Amazing. And it can send it through connective tissue, or does it stay in the nervous system?
Sometimes it goes through the blood. Sometimes they're sent through the blood. Sometimes they're sent through like, I'll give you an example. The pancreas, it can send things from the pancreas directly into the small intestine. And what it sends into the small intestine, then the body then uses for digestive purposes to break down things in the body. But the pancreas also releases insulin. Insulin is a hormone that travels through the body, that goes to every single cell, that opens up the cell so glucose can go from the bloodstream into the cell so it can use it as energy. So there are some that just travel through the nerves. There's some that travel in the interstitial spaces. There's some that travel through the blood. There's some, so there's some that are messages that
Love
stay in
that
the
I asked
brain that
this
never leave the
question.
brain and the brain stays, right? So
Thank you.
so you have different methods of how the body receives them.
Wow. That's really important information, I think. um, yeah, because people will say, like, oh, you're just hormonal. What does that even mean? You're hormonal too.
Yes, exactly. That's true. And I mean, it is important. And I'm going to go back to, one of the fundamental things that I do when I work with my patients is I always want to treat the underlying cause of the problem. Because, like you said, someone can have hot flashes or night sweats, and that can be a adrenal problem, which is your cortisol levels, your adrenals release cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone that travels through your body. And most women in their 20s and 30s, if they're experiencing that kind of issue, it may not be early perimenopause. It really may be an adrenal problem. And so the tools that we're going to use to treat constant stress are different tools than the tools that we treat if women's estrogen levels are declining and the hot flashes and the night sweats are coming due to going through the perimenopausal time. So we'll use different tools. But if we just look at the symptoms and we go to Dr. Google because your doctor isn't telling you what you need, or you're going to the high school student at the health food store and asking them to help you, and they're not looking at the physiology of the body and understanding the underlying cause, they may give you the wrong regimen and then you try it and it doesn't work, right? So this is why we don't want to just look at the symptoms and treat the symptoms. We want to work with people. I always encourage people to work with people that have a breadth of knowledge to look at everything that's going on for you and find out what the underlying cause is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Very important to get the proper tool for the job.
That's right.
So I am also an ADHD person, a neurodivergent person, and I would imagine that, well, I mean, I've read research that suggests that this life stage is more challenging for neurodivergent women. I've even heard anecdotal stories that some people find out or are diagnosed with a neurodivergence for the first time when they reach sort of the postmenopausal stage. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Maybe what you've seen or what you know?
Yeah. So again, this is an area. It's funny. I was doing some research last night, and that question came up in the research. And one of the challenges from a research perspective is it starts with women haven't been researched
Hmm.
at an equal rate as men. So there's not as much research out there. So as we're starting to look at women and all of the hormonal changes that happen to women, we then have to start looking at how do those changes impact our different subgroups of women. And so what I find when I work with women in practice is that I am noticing women are being diagnosed with things like ADD or ADHD or some type of neurodivergence, and that is happening for them later. So instead of being diagnosed as a child, they're being diagnosed later. And that by being diagnosed later, one of the reasons why they're being diagnosed later is because, again, the research originally on ADD and ADHD was on boys, and that the symptoms that girls have, that how they turn inward a little bit more, there may be the playing with your hair, the biting the fingernails, like those things were not considered symptoms of the problem. So when girls were younger, they're not being categorized correctly so that they get the support that they need in order to have the tools. And the way that that shows up is as we get older and when women are in their 30s, they're in their careers. They may be moms. They may be caring for older parents. They, are dealing with all the things that happen in the world. And so all of that requires a lot of mental energy. And so being under that weight, what I find is being under that weight of all of that mental energy of trying to navigate your life and potentially the lives of other people, your partner, your kids, your parents, all of that
Gotta stay regulated. Gotta
causes,
stay regulated.
right? The regulation is really hard. So now let's throw into the mix of all of that. Now your brain is rebooting.
Great.
That makes a
Just in time.
perfect case for it to become very clear for people to get diagnoses that they hadn't had before, because you're under so much, I'm going to say stress, but what I mean by that is your brain is working really hard, your body's working really hard, all of your chemicals are working hard. You need all these nutrients that it becomes easier to then see, oh, wait a second, you've been managing this neurodivergence all along, but now it's just too many things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the some of the lifetime research that I've read shows a spike around like life transitions. So going away to school for the first time, getting married, getting divorced, parental death, birth of a child for sure. Um, yeah, so again, that's it. And people sort of wonder like, oh, what's wrong with me all of a sudden, and then we pick up on the mental health symptoms, and then maybe they only get that mental health aspect addressed and hope that sort of the body symptoms will improve. But also maybe we should be, I don't know, maybe we need a new screener for younger women.
I definitely think that the first thing for us as women, as a community, is to have conversations. So all women, if they live long enough, will go through the menopausal process. All women. Not one woman will not go through that. So we need to make sure that we have an open dialogue where we're talking about what's going on with our mental health, what's going on with our physical health. And it doesn't have to be a either or. It could be, hey, you have been compensating because I am dyslexic. My brother and I guess I don't know what happened when we were younger, but when we were tested, they recognized that for him and he got help, and I just overcompensated. And to your point, my overcompensation, I still compensated when I was in college. I knew because of what was going on with my brother that maybe something was going on for me. But when I got to medical school and the load of information, I couldn't continue to overcompensate. So my overcompensation was I'd go to class, I would leave class, I would rewrite all of my notes. I'd write all my questions on the side of the notes because I knew within 48 hours, if I didn't get it in, I wasn't going to retain it as well. I would use colored magic markers, like all the things to do that. But 8 hours of medical school, I could not rewrite 8 hours of notes. I couldn't do it. So that's where it became, I had to learn different tools to manage my dyslexia because I couldn't do that and get through medical school, right? So people that have this different way of learning and seeing the world, that's happening for them. And they could also be going through perimenopause, right? So, like you said, as these life events unfold, we have to be able to have open dialogue so that we can learn and we can have tools. Because once we have an awareness, this is my firm belief. And once you understand what's the underlying cause, well, you learn differently. Okay, well, let me learn differently. I can't learn like everybody else. I need to pull out my magic markers and my coloring books and my crayons and all the things. And my notebook needs to look different than everybody else's notebook. We can still all study together. It's okay. Right. So I had tools, and there was my physiology professor talked about learning differences in medical school. And if it wasn't for my physiology professor, and I would go to him after class and he would teach me tools on how to learn, not just physiology, but how to learn in medical school. And without him, I probably would not have been successful. Dr. Modell, right? So that's what helped me. So if you learn that that's what's happening to you in your 30s or in your 40s, that's fine. And you also need to learn about the perimenopausal transition that's happening, and you need tools for that as well. So this whole conversation, I'm so grateful that you had me on so that we can have this conversation about having women understand tools that they need and support that they need. I would not have gotten through my menopausal transition without my girls. I mean, my besties, they happen to be naturopathic doctors too, but we were talking about all the things. Here's what's happening in all the places, in the mind and in the body and in the skin and the digestive tract and, sexually. And look, we were talking about all the things. There was an open space for us to talk about it with each other, to help each other through it, and to give each other support and guidance on how to get through it. Women are not built to live in isolation. Women are built to live and support each other in communities. We are the backbone of communities. And that's what I really want women to understand, and why I want to create on my website, I have, I don't know, like 800 articles. So I have like articles and the scorecards and the other things that people can use, because I want people to have resources to understand they're not alone. They're not crazy. What they think and feel is true for them, and own that, and then get help so that you can feel better, because you don't have to suffer through life. You can have a healthy, vibrant life.
That sounds nice. Yeah, no, when you were talking about the physical support and the mental support, I was gonna say it doesn't have to be either or. It should be yes and.
Yes, and
Yeah, instead of saying, "Well, I think you're depressed." Well, yes, and hello. I didn't know that like depression could make you sweat a lot. Like it doesn't. It doesn't. But I've gotten all sorts of other things. Like one time I was complaining about like a sensory issue, like I could feel something. And they were like, "Well, it's because you're skinny." And I was like, "What does that mean?"
no.
And it was like one of those things that they just brush it off to shut down the question. But like that's sort of the level of
Yeah, well, from a nervous system perspective, that is on the scorecard, actually. That's one of the things on the perimenopause scorecard, is that if you feel like you have these kind of weird sensations or itchy kind of things that are going on your skin, but it's not really itchy, but you can't really explain it, that is, the neurological changes that begin to happen to women. So, Yeah,
Wow,
it's
I
not
think I'm
because
gonna
you're
go
sitting.
immediately go look at that Perry scorecard. You said it's on your website?
Yeah, you should be. I mean, there is a link. I don't know if you can put a link in the notes, but there's a link to where
Totally.
people can find it. Yeah. And I don't know if it's on my website. That's a good question. I'm going to ask my assistant. And if it isn't, then we need to figure out a place to put it. I think it is on in social media, like Instagram, they have like a highlight section, or in the bio section, there's a link to it. So certainly if anyone uses Instagram, you should be able to find it there as well.
What's your Instagram handle?
Healthy Days. So the name of my practice is Healthy Days Naturopathic Medical Center. So that's my Instagram handle, and on Facebook. And my website is Healthy Days. And so my name is spelled Dae. So Healthy Days is spelled Daes. So Healthy Days, like a play on my name, Dr.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I love it. It was like you were born for this.
I was just lucky that I have friends that are super clever. They were like, you should call your practice Healthy Days as a play on your name. And I was like, that's a good idea. So, yes, I have to give credit to my friends who figured that out for me.
I love that. See, it's just another reason why we should be relying on our supports, our natural supports. I love that. Amazing. I'm so glad you were here. The very last thing we are going to do is
Yes.
I'm going to shuffle up these cards here.
Okay.
These are just silly. They're from a company called We're Not Really Strangers, and they just make like cards and like empowering merchandise. And they sent me these confidence booster cards. And so some of these questions are kind of nice. I'm just going to ask you one and we'll see if we like it. I feel like this one totally fits with the nature of our conversation. So I'm going to go for it. Describe a situation where you said no and you're really glad that you did.
Huh. Okay. Let's see. I feel like that happens every day.
Of saying no.
So I definitely think it comes with age. I definitely think it comes with age. But I will say a couple weeks ago, this is kind of a fun one. So a couple of weeks ago, I was asked to speak at a retreat in Pennsylvania, and it was like a 3-hour drive to Pennsylvania for the retreat, and then a 3-hour drive home. And I could stay over. I could have stayed overnight, but I was thinking about that, and I was like, I don't think that I have the energy and the focus to be able to do all of that. So I love talking about women's health. I was grateful to be invited to come and be an expert speaker on women's health. And I was like, no, I don't think I can do that. So I said no. And then what happened was my sister in law had my niece early. So because that weekend was now free and open, I got to spend Saturday, instead of speaking, which I love to speak about women's health, I got to spend it with my baby niece and just go and hold her and see my other nieces and nephews, check on my brother and my sister-in-law. So it became a family day
You
instead
were able
of,
to
a
commune with
work
your
day.
family. Yeah.
So that was, at the time that I said no, I didn't know that it was opening up the space for that beautiful thing to happen in my life. But I think the practice of learning to say no when I feel like there's too many things going on always opens up space for something beautiful to show up. And so because that happens, it gives me more confidence to say no to things that don't feel right, because I don't know, but something beautiful is probably around the corner, even if the beautiful thing is literally just being able to take a nap in the middle of the day, or to be able to rest when I feel tired. So that was it. Yeah.
That was so beautiful. It actually brought me to tears.
No,
Oh
it was
my
an
goodness.
amazing, yeah, that was a
Thank
good
you for
one. That was a good,
sharing that.
yeah.
Yeah, that was the perfect question for you. It's even orange to match you.
Woo! I felt like orange was the thing that I should wear today for this great opportunity to talk to you.
I love that. That is so wonderful. Well, amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Day, for being here and speaking with me. I know that my audience is going to have a lot to gain from this. Even if it's not like personally relevant to them, may they be able to better support the people in their lives. Yeah.
So thank you so much for doing this. I know that you have a passion for this and sharing and teaching people that there are things that they can do and feel empowered. So I wanted to say, I love that you're doing this. I love that you're continuing to podcast because you know that it's one of your geniuses that you can do and that you can share in the world. And so I really appreciate that as well. I feel like we're soul sisters in trying to make sure people have information, women have information about ways to support themselves in their health. And so if there's anything I can ever do for anyone in your audiences, whether it's menopause, perimenopause, or other health issues and concerns, one of my books is on gratitude. So certainly I believe in understanding what's going on in the mind and what's going on in the heart and making that part of the health circle. So hopefully people will check me out because there may be some other things besides menopause, which is my passion, that may be
We
helpful.
contain multitudes, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. If you want to connect with the Neurodivergent Report, you can find us at ND Report Pod on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube. If you're looking to support the show, the best thing you can do is to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Please. You can check out ndreportpod.com for more information, or if you want to be a guest contributor. Until next time, be well, do good.